Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. In today's video we're going to be discussing a very interesting topic that I've been asked so many times, and finally I'm making a video on this, and I'm actually planning to make it a series. So if you're interested, keep on watching and subscribe to the channel so you can learn more about it. So today we're going to talk about purchasing a dental practice. So as you know, I own a dental practice in Boston, Massachusetts, and buying a dental practice was always a plan. It was always my dream. Even before I moved to America, I always wanted to be a business owner, and owning my own business meant to me that, I don't know, it felt to me that I have achieved something. My family always owned their own business. My father was a business owner, and I just saw myself being in charge. I have a very weird personality, and I always thought I'm a terrible employee, and I am. I'm very opinionated, and you can probably tell if you watch my videos, you know that I have opinions. So I always kind of thought that, I'm difficult to get along with, so I need to be kind of in charge so I could have a better work environment. So when I moved to America, I knew I had to qualify, and I was studying for my exams. But when I was studying for my exams, I already was reading up on all the literature and on everything I needed to know to buy a dental practice. And even before I was accepted to dental school, I had all the books that I have read multiple times, that are read to holes now, that are like so worn down, highlighted, side noted. So I started collecting information on buying a dental practice very, very early. But when I was in dental school, I was already looking for a location. My general idea was to do a startup dental practice. I started researching how to actually find the information, how to actually, start up a dental practice. And I was looking for a building to actually buy a building first. I didn't want to rent, I wanted to buy a building, and I was looking for towns in Massachusetts where I live. We didn't plan to move, to find particular locations that are not too dense in the amount of dentists. I was counting the population to dentist ratio, so I'm very, very knowledgeable in this department. Even when I actually bought the practice and I was trying to update it and renovate it, I was talking about the location and how it generally is correlated with the population, and I was telling them that I found this location because of the correlation of the patients and doctors, and they were like, whoa, this is a service that we offer, the company that I was working with, and it's paid for service, and you did it all on your own. So yes, I know a lot about buying and selling dental practices and building your own. So this all was brewing in me before we were in dental school. We bought the house where we live now because we like the town. We like the population to dentist ratio in this town. There's not that many dentists. In the town where we live, there are a lot of dentists who are working out of the houses, and when they retire, they're not going to sell their practices, they're going to sell records. And if I were to open an office in this town where we eventually bought the house, I would just buy their records. And I had this plan when we bought our house when I was at dental school. So I came to the question of buying a dental practice very, very educated. It was not a spur of the moment decision. It was something that I was planning through. And I will even insert a clip here from my very old video when I was still in dental school, where I was talking about buying a dental practice.
I know that I want to open my own practice as soon as I can do it. The sooner the better. Don't think I'm too crazy or too ambitious. I know I can do it. If you're watching this video and thinking, you crazy person, you cannot buy a practice right after dental school, you watch me. I can do whatever I want.
And when I was at dental school, we actually went to see other people's dental practices to purchase, but they were just never right. So when I got out of dental school, I started working as an associate. Eventually, the more and more I learned about it, I decided to go away from the startup idea, and I decided to buy a dental practice rather than build from scratch. Because buying a dental practice means you get a flow of cash and flow of patients right away, rather than investing a large amount of money into something that you will have to wait for a long time to see the return on investment. And at the time, it felt like a better decision for me. So we decided to go ahead and buy a dental practice. Well, just a general idea. I started looking at the practices to buy rather than locations to build. And if you know anything about buying a dental practice, it is, or anything, like really buy anything. Like when you look for a house to buy, there's a lot of duds on the market. And if there's something good that appears, it's gone in a week. Like it's gone really quickly. So you kind of have to always be looking just to see if there's something good. And I was looking even when I was in dental school. When I started, and I was looking when I started working as well, but I knew that we have an idea of moving to Europe. So I kind of knew it wasn't going to be something that I'm going to stay in forever. It always was a temporary solution. So I started thinking, okay, I need like a smaller practice, something that I could grow and sell, hopefully for more money that I bought it for, and for us to move to Europe. So that was my plan originally. And when I started working just to kind of save money for that, because it is an investment. There's a lot of down payments that need to happen even before you get a loan from the bank. Like for anything, like for school too, you have to have some starting capital before you actually go into it. So I started working as an associate and to just kind of test my skills. But more and more I worked, the more and more I understood that I actually wanted to own. But when my contract expired, I was pregnant. I was 6 months pregnant with my baby. And I realized, look, if I don't do it now, if I don't buy a practice now, I'm never gonna buy it. It's never going to happen, because I knew that I was gonna love my baby so much, and I felt like I was just not going to take that leap when I was a mom. Because I know how much work goes into it, and maybe it's my mom believes it's pregnancy hormones that made me do it. At 7 months pregnant, I bought my practice. She totally believes that it's like my mind was just not my own. But my thought process was that if I don't do it right now and I get my baby and I start to be kind of a stay-at-home mom or working part-time, I would never want to take that leap, leave my baby alone and invest the time to actually own a practice. And again, I knew that we're moving to Europe. We're not moving to Europe. It's not set in stone. Like, don't quote me on that. But I knew that we have that plan to move to Europe. So it's not like I can wait for my baby to kind of grow up a little bit and then buy a practice and wait until she's a little bit older. And I definitely knew I wouldn't do it when she is teeny tiny. So I decided, you know what? Let's just do it. Let's just do it now before I know what motherhood is like. That's kind of my motto in life and how I live, and don't do what I do. Eyes closed, head first, and just go. So you close your eyes, you don't think about it, you just do it. And that's what I do. That's how I live my life. So I just closed my eyes. I started looking into buying a practice more seriously. So we started to go to showings. I met realtors. And again, there are a lot of duds on the market, because think about it, who is selling the practice? Either people who failed, people who built a practice from scratch and it didn't go well, or people who retired. And when people retire, they usually, like, when they're close to retirement, they usually don't really care what they're doing. Like, they work less and less, and the population of patients goes down. So you kind of look at it and it's a waste of money. Like, there's so much work to be put into the practices. Some of the practices that I looked at, and most of the practices actually that I looked at, they were like fixer-upper houses. They still had paper records. They didn't have digital x-rays. And like, what year are you living in? You have paper records. You still write charts by hand. And it's common. It's very common when you look at the market and you see what's for sale. And sometimes you find something that's so good, like for example, like the practice is doing well, the dentist is moving and he's relocating, so he has to sell the location, and it's good location, like, or he's just going to shorten his hours. He has 2 practices, he wants to sell 1, but it's up to date. There's equipment that works, staff that knows what they're doing, and I was looking for that. That's basically my goal. That was what I wanted. And my checklist was, I wanted a practice with collection about $800,000 a year. I wanted it to be like on a smaller side, 3 to 5 chairs. And I wanted it to be in the driving distance from my area, because I knew I was gonna have a baby. I didn't really want to travel too much. And when I was looking at the practices around me, most of the things were just not good, like scary, bad. And nothing was in my area at all. I like to practice in North Shore, which I don't live in North Shore. I live completely different location, and it meant driving for multiple hours, but that practice would have worked for me. And Another practice that I was looking for was in Cambridge, which is close to me, but it was just not right. Like, it wasn't an office building, and there was like it was an office building with no signage, like 80s old, smells like an old carpet office building. And the practice was okay, but there was like another dental practice, another general dentist right across, like the doors are looking at each other, and it was a much better practice. I looked them up. So that was also not an option. But then I went to see this practice that I bought eventually. And it was a Russian lady who was selling the practice. She was charming. She was so like grandma-esque and just so lovable. And it was exactly what I was not looking for. So the collections were very low. It was in Boston, where I do not live. I live quite far away from Boston. It was 3-op, and it did have room for expansion, so that met my requirements, but the collections were really low and the rent was really high. I liked her patient population. I liked that majority of patients in this practice were Russian. It is easy to market yourself in the community that is substantial. Russian community is not small in Boston, and it just travels. You don't have to market anything, because like Russian people go to Russian people, just like any other community. You know, Arabs goes to Arabs, and generally people want to find a doctor who understands them. They have older relatives who need a lot of dental work, which is great, and they want a person who speaks their language, so they don't have to find a translator when they travel to their appointments. So I thought that would be a great fit for me, which it was ultimately a great fit for me. The practice was really right for me at the time. And we went ahead and purchased it, even though there were a lot of kind of red flags that I decided to overlook. It was not what I was looking for generally. But we bought it because the lady was so nice, because it was actually kind of cozy. The practice inside was kind of warm, even though it was very outdated. Like, it was old lady owned it and she built it, so it was an older practice. But it just felt cozy to me when I walked in there, and I decided to overlook a lot of factors that were on my checklist, which I now understand was my mistake. So the question that I always get asked, if I regret buying a practice, and the answer is not easy. The answer is yes and no. So no, no meaning I do not regret buying a practice. I wanted it for so long, and I'm so glad I did it. I accomplished it. I felt amazing when I purchased this practice. I felt like I achieved the goal that I was going to for so long. And I've learned so much from this practice. Just being a business owner in the United States, where the tax system and rent system and all that is just such a grow-up experience, such a learning experience. I feel like I upgraded to a certain level in life. Like, I feel like if life was a video game, I leveled up. So no, I don't regret buying it at all. And no, I don't regret buying a practice with a small baby either, because again, I always realized it was going to take a lot of work. And I always realized, I would have to leave my baby alone for a certain period of time. And that's why I thought, okay, like, she is not going to remember this first year. She's not going to remember not having a mom around all the time, because she's tiny. And I wanted to kind of build a practice up, and when she's a little bit older, when she actually started building those memories, I would be there, because I would free up my schedule, build up the practice a little bit, maybe hire an associate so I could be home more. And I do regret buying a practice in a way that when you know what you know, like when you do so much research and you know what practice should be, you know what it should look like, and because you like somebody, because you like certain things about it, you compromise a lot of the fundamentals that you know the practice should have. You shouldn't do that. I regret doing that, because I knew what I wanted. I knew what the good practice should look like. And I completely disregarded it because I liked the person who owned the practice, which ultimately brought a lot of problems for me. Owning a practice is one of the most difficult things I have ever done. Not because it's just, yes, it is difficult to own a business, and it's difficult to own a business as a new mom with a newborn baby, but it's just me overcoming issues of another doctor who misled the practice, who misrun the practice. Additionally, I decided to buy a practice in a big city that in America, in and of itself, is a very, very difficult thing to live, because every contractor that you have to contract has to be a union, because Boston is a union city. There's so many rent related things that normally wouldn't apply to any other location, but in Boston they're particularly important to work with, and they make your life very difficult as a business owner. Taxes in Boston are much higher than anywhere else. Parking is always an issue, and finding staff, because there's no parking, is completely difficult. So when you're looking for staff and you work in the city with no parking nearby, you're limiting yourself to people who only live in the city. So you can't hire from other locations, or you have to pay for their parking in some way, which is very difficult in the city. That would cost you a lot of money additionally. So there were just a lot of hurdles like this that I didn't know when I was getting into, and those parts I didn't know. I misregarded the parts I did know that I needed. I completely threw them out the window. I dove into the things that I didn't understand anything about, like owning a business in Boston, renting a location in Boston, dealing with Boston construction, dealing with parking, dealing with freaking movies being filmed around your practice, which I actually had to do, the last thing I thought would be a problem, but it was. And yeah, it's just kind of threw me into a very difficult emotional state, threw me in a very difficult financial state. And in that sense, yes, I do regret buying this particular practice. My best advice to people who are thinking about purchasing a practice would be do a lot of research. Do a lot of research, and it's pretty clear cut. Like, it's not difficult to understand how practice runs and what good practice looks like. It's kind of like buying a house. Like, yes, you have your wishes, like I want 3-bedroom, 3-bath and stuff like that. That's a completely one thing. But when you know that you need a house that has solid foundation, you need a house that has a reasonable tax rate, you need a house with a septic tank, or a house that attached to a sewage system or something like that. So you have your requirements that are systematic and that are necessary for the house to operate, for the house to stand. Like, you may love the house, but the foundation is cracked. You wouldn't buy this house, and you shouldn't disregard that, even though you love the house, because it's not easy to fix. Same thing with the dental practice. Like, it's not difficult to know those things that make practice run really well. It's not difficult to understand what collection the practice should be, what staff it should have, what schedule it should have, what overhead it should have, and all that kind of, what insurance it should take, where the location should be. It's not difficult. There's not that many things to know. And once you know them, don't disregard them. Follow the rules, follow the checklist, which unfortunately I didn't do. And it's okay. Like, even the practice was there for 13 years, the one that I own right now, and it's going. It's just more difficult for me to cope and to run it as a new business owner, because you're kind of picking it up from a person who was close to retirement, wasn't doing the things right, that she wasn't doing the things that she should have been doing. And it's just kind of, instead of taking over the practice that runs itself, I took over practice, and I am now the practice. I am now working for everybody, because there's no systems in place, because it's such a small practice with such a small collection that dependent on one person. And I am now the person. But that person who ran the practice before me had 13 years of experience of running this particular practice. And I am the person who has to now be the heart of the practice. Have no experience, and it was a very quick learning curve for me. Like, I have to figure it out now, because now I'm here and I am doing this, and I get this bill and I have to figure out how to pay it. So emotionally and physically, it was really tough. A lot of people also ask me, how about owning a practice and being a mom and just having a baby? And that's a completely different bag of beans. Just working as a mom and having a baby is difficult, but owning a practice means that you work 24/7. And it's such a cliche to say you work 24/7 when you're a business owner. But really, normally when you're an associate, you would put your handpiece down and you would go home and wait for your salary. But when you're a business owner, there's so much more homework. You have employees that you're responsible for. So you are going home, you're figuring out how you're going to pay their payroll. You are on the phone with sewage and plumbing, and I was flooded recently, so I had to file an insurance claim and figure out how to work with water in my office and all these things that as an associate you wouldn't be thinking about. And when you're home, the baby takes so much of you. Like right now I'm filming when she's napping, and that's the only time I have free, and that's about an hour, and that's all I have. And that my husband works as well, and daycare is an option, of course, but I don't know, it just didn't feel right for us. But generally, when you're home, you want to be with your baby, daycare or not. When you're home, you want to spend quality time with your baby. And when you're a business owner, you just don't get to do that. You always have your business in the back of your mind. And yeah, you have to accept that. You have to figure out what your priority is, and you have to know that it's going to be like this. There's no way around it. There's just no way around it. There's nothing you can do and not worry about your business. Think about your business all the time. Think about the next thing that you have to do, because there's always a next thing. And it's going to be up to you to decide if you want that, or if you want that when your kid is young, or if you want that. There's really no age where, unless like your kid is 18 and go to college, like when a kid is they're every age, and I wouldn't know, my kid's 1, but I imagine that there's always something that your kid has to do. And I feel like the older they are, the more they require from you. You have to go to practices, you have to take them, you have to drive them to classes, and you have to do all that kind of stuff. And being a business owner at that time is probably not the best idea, unless, of course, what I would wish I would have done, and that would be, I guess, my advice to moms. Don't buy a practice that doesn't run itself. If you're a mom and you want to be a business owner, you have to be prepared to invest. Here you're spending to gain. So I would recommend you to buy a practice that makes at least $1 million a year, or at least more than $800,000 a year. And you want a bigger practice. Like, your general idea when you buy a practice, and that was my general idea, like, I'm young, I am inexperienced, so I want to buy something small and something manageable. No. When you're young and inexperienced, when you want the least involvement, you want to buy the most expensive practice you can find, because that practice has processes set up already. That practice knows what it's doing. The owner of that practice is just chilling. He already set everything up, and his employees are doing work for him. So if you're a mom and you want to be the least involved in the business, you want to buy the biggest practice you can that runs itself. And that's my takeaway. And that's unfortunately what I didn't do, but that's my goal to get to in the future. But yes. So basically, answering the question, do I regret buying a practice? No, as a concept, I do not regret buying a practice. It is an amazing experience, and it's something that I always wanted. Do I regret buying the practice that I bought? And am I having a hard time? Yes, big time. I emotionally, last month when we had a flooding and we had to close, but I still had to pay employees because it's obviously not their fault, and they're like college kids and elderly ladies who have to support themselves, and they can't withstand not working and not receiving any money. So you have to pay your employees, but you can't collect any money. That was probably the most stressful time of my life. I disappeared from social media. I really felt like I'm not taking care of my child the way I should be. And it was just really tough. We're done now. Practice is open, practice is running, everything is okay. But yeah, there are moments like this that I wish I didn't have to experience. So yeah, that's kind of the end of my video. Sorry if my speech was weird, because I'm very Invisalign and it's only second week and I'm dying. Yeah, stay tuned for more videos about buying a dental practice. Stay tuned for more videos, me talking about being a business owner, and also subscribe to my vlog channel. I started vlogging. It's fun. It's going great. Don't quote me on the vlogging frequently, but still come and support me. Whatever you watching my videos really helps me, and it just kind of an additional. Me talking to the camera is like my stress relief. It's helpful for me to kind of cope with all the business and motherhood stresses. So I do enjoy that. And the comments support me. Come subscribe. Come say hi. All right, I'll see you in my next one. Goodbye.